Remember, finding great car service
starts with an investigation. How you doing, everybody? My name is Chris.
Hey, I'm Gary.
Welcome to Car Service Investigation.
What's up, internet world again?
Special thanks to Mr. Producer for a good laugh right before he hits record.
That was a good one. I like that. Every time he does that, Chris, we have a good show too. So this
Amen,
really
right?
goes again.
Yeah.
This goes exactly what we're going to talk about, which is don't lie to your mechanic, folks. We already know what's going on.
Please.
So yeah,
please.
Just be real factual of everything. You know, this is going to be sort of a quick CSI for Chris and I.
Yeah, it will.
It comes down to, we know when you guys are not telling us a full picture, and I hate to use the word lie, but I digress.
Well,
so Chris,
no, Gary, I think it's a good point, right? Because what we're really talking about is what you said, is information, right?
Yeah.
Information to the service advisor is then passed down to the mechanic, and that is priceless, right? It's priceless.
Yeah.
Even if you think that information is not relevant to why you're at the shop for the day, the service advisor should probably still hear it.
Oh, agreed, man. We're going to hear the noise that you say doesn't exist. We're going to figure out come on, man. This has been going on for weeks or maybe a month, and it's going to come out eventually. Yeah. And for Chris, I think you'll vouch for me this, Chris, is that when you're the service advisor across the desk and the mechanic comes to you and gives you the list, and you're like, well, wait a minute now. He just complained about a belt squeak, let's say. It's like, yeah, well, I hear this loud knocking noise when I pulled it into the shop, and the strut mount is just wasted or something. I mean, it's like, come on, guys, give us the full picture so we can give you the full picture, and also to save you money. That's the whole point of it, is to try to save you money.
Well, that's the point, right? Because it's happened a lot, Gary. Like, and suspension noises are good examples, because somebody let's just say they came in for an oil change or whatever, and the mechanic drove around the parking lot and heard a noise over the speed bump, and then he told me, and because he found a problem with the strut or the mount or control arm,
right? You
call the customer and you say, hey, how about those noises over speed bumps? And they're like, what noises? And you're like, what do you mean, what noises? There's no way you don't hear this. It's very loud or very noticeable. But at the same time, you have to remember that when you went to get the mileage, you started the car and the radio was literally at full blast, and maybe they didn't hear the noise because they drive around and they just don't pay attention. Right? So there's a good number of people that are just willfully ignorant. I don't know.
Also, too,
but there have been.
There's been times where you look at what you said, that there's sometimes people that just like, oh my God, this is going to cost me too much money, and I don't feel it being a safety concern per se. Right. I think that's some of the things that you were pushing on. Where we talk about don't lie to your mechanic. I'm going to give you we're going to have a couple stories here. Is that we had back in the day, when this first came out, it's like you see it with some of the insurance companies, the little dongle thing you stick in your computer thing under your dashboard so they can, give you better insurance rates.
We thought this was really neat when it came out, right?
Yeah.
It was a memory
code reader. Yeah, exactly. And so it took live data. And so you had to put $100 down deposit, because if you took off with my tool, I had to buy another one. It cost me $100. So the guy told me, myself and our master mechanic with me at the time, that there's a really weird jerky feeling going on at 65 miles an hour, like the car was bucking. And so we're like, here, $100 down. We put the reader in, said leave it in for 5 days, and he went on his business. He brought it back. He says, oh yeah, it's happened several times. So we plug it in, we hook the laptop up to it, and we start reading all the data. And our mechanic and me look at each other and go, this is happening at 85 miles an hour to 88 miles an hour, and it goes away at 89 and up. And we look at the customer and go, so dude, when does this happen? He's like, oh, it always happens at like 60, 65 miles an hour. And we're like, no, it's happening at 85 to 88 miles an hour. He goes, I don't go that fast. And we show him the data, and you could see the ramp up of miles per hour. And you just watched him turn red in the face. And the reason why I bring this story up, Chris, is because we had the car for a full day, could never get to duplicate the problem, because we were driving at 60 to 70 miles an hour.
7 different test drives, right? How many different test drives were done?
And how much that wasted our time and his time having his car in our shop.
Amen.
And so that's one example of, be honest. Like, hey guys, when I'm doing about 85, 90, I get this
Right.
really bad jerky feeling in the car.
Right.
Okay,
Right. Don't
Chris
be
might
embarrassed
say,
to. Yeah. Go. I'm sorry.
yeah,
Go.
yeah. Chris would probably say, well, the speed limit's not 85, 90, bro. So you should be driving that fast. But
Right.
okay, we'll look at it.
Right.
But
Well, I was going to say, don't be embarrassed to tell us the truth.
right.
Okay. Because another similar example, the guy that said, he was embarrassed that he was going 85 miles an hour, right? It wasn't necessarily a deliberate lie. It was, but it didn't have bad intentions. Just like the time we had the Subaru that hit the quote pothole, and the customer told us that he was maybe 10, 15 miles an hour, but the rim was cracked all the way across the entire rim, and it wasn't possible for that to happen at that speed.
Right.
So a little probing and asking some questions, and it turns out he was really doing about 40 miles an hour when he hit that pothole. And again, why not just be honest? That's the question, right? And
oh, dude, you bring up Subarus, right. Chris. Bring up the Subaru story with the teenager and the
right. I was just going to say, we had a teenager lie to his father, and so I got a car towed into me one day, a Subaru. It was a nice WRX, unfortunately. And motor was locked up. And the dad calls me and says, hey, it's my son's car. He was driving home from college, and it just died on him. And so the next day we get in it, we look at it, and the motor's froze. It's dead. It locked up a cylinder. And then the son came by early in the morning to get stuff out of the car. And the son tells me that he probably shouldn't have just turned up the radio when he started hearing a noise from the engine. And, an hour and a half, 2 hours later, the car died and he had to have it towed. Right?
That's a nice
dad
WRX
eventually
too.
Got that information, right? The dad was told, but it was incredible that this kid was just so nonchalant. I got a $40,000 car I just destroyed because my dad paid for it and I don't care.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, you look at the facts that come in. The whole show, folks, as we've always said, is to bring you the best information possible so you can save money on your car repair.
Right.
So,
and
like
have
Chris
a good
was talking
experience at the shop.
Yeah, exactly. And so, like Chris was bringing up through pre-show about, a car that made noise over speed bumps, and one of our mechanics said, hey boss, this thing's making some bad noise, and it turns out what was wrong was the strut mounts were bad on it on one side, but because this guy took so long to actually bring it into the shop and not mention this to us at all, he ended up having to do strut mounts and struts where he could have just done strut mounts because like, when did the noise happen? Oh, I don't know, like 6 months ago. It just got worse. I mean, he literally put a hole through the whole strut mount. That takes some force to do.
Ignoring noises is not a good thing to do.
Right. And what did we always say, Chris? Well. We mention the dentist all the time. Like, oh, that hurts. Well, I'll go to the dentist when it gets worse. Like, well, why don't you have a tooth? Well, I sort of lagged on getting to the dentist. But
right.
So
Amen.
I don't know. I look at how me and you have always said on the show in looking at how the relationship between the customer and the client always is. I mean, the client and the mechanic always is, going to that shop and building that relationship, and then looking at the facts that you give that person. That's the most important part of this episode, is giving that facts to Chris when he's talking to you. Like, when did this start happening? Has it gotten worse? And so forth. I mean, so,
and that's, I guess, a good example to say, if you're at a shop and they don't ask you questions every time you drop off your car, find a different shop.
Yeah, that's a good point. I didn't even think about that when we were talking earlier.
I didn't either, right? It just occurred to me that your service advisor is kind of like a private detective in a sense, right? Like, we have to probe you and ask you for questions because we know the average consumer is just not going to remember to say everything.
Yeah. That's a very good point, dude. Because look at Ray, dude. With his shop, he what was it, 2.5 pages that he would ask customers.
Oh my God,
yeah. I mean, it was crazy at what he built on his questionnaire for the service advisor would have to ask. I mean, and those questions only took at best 10 minutes, to get them in and out, to get them written up.
Right.
But it gave you a bigger book, to read for the mechanic. And that's the whole point of this episode, folks, is that when we take the car in from you and you're not being all upfront on certain things, and the mechanic gets the car, he now wastes more time. When he wastes time, guess what? That comes out of your wallet and into our bank account.
That's money out of
That's
your
the
pocket.
facts. Yeah, exactly.
Bottom
It
line.
truly is.
Bottom line. It
You know,
really
and
is.
a
So don't
great-
be embarrassed is the key, right?
Yeah.
Don't be
Yeah,
embarrassed.
yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, we're gonna all look at it and say, well, I don't want to, talk about that belt squeak that's been happening for 6 months, and now it's gone,
Right.
and I have no AC. Well, that's because the
Right.
belt froze onto the AC pulley, guys.
Right.
So
Right.
I
Yeah,
don't know.
it's
I'd
crazy.
like Chris and I said this was going to be a pretty quick episode. I think we got it nut down. It's just like, hey guys, be really factual with your mechanic, your service
Mhm.
advisor, whoever you're dealing with your cars. So thanks for watching. Subscribe to the video,
Tickle the bell.
like it, please like it.
Right. Leave a comment. It helps. We like them.
Yeah, and share the video at all. And guys, have a great week, and we'll see you next week.
Stay safe.
Remember, finding great car service
Starts with an investigation.